Excellent. Good morning. Good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me for our live series weekdays at 11 a.m. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you that are watching the replay, do make sure you give me a hashtag replay in the comments so I can loop back and say hello to you at a later point in time. And for those of you that are starting to hop on live, thank you. Welcome. It is lovely to see you here. Now, today, I have the absolute pleasure of speaking to Dana. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Dana today. So let me pull up my notes. Having built a 7-figure business without sales calls and as a former dominatrix, Dana knows all about owning her power and being unique. She has worked with clients for over 25 years, helping them keep their heads out of their ass so they can scale with ease. She is the author of 5 books, winner of multiple awards, and a woman who treats her own personal development like an extreme sport. These days, Dana is a business performance coach for those who love to play full out and are looking for every advantage they can to find and reach their goals with ease instead of grinding it out. Dana, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Annette. I was looking forward to this, even though it is the middle of the night here.
Absolutely. Dana just shared with me that she is in Canada, so she is basically asleep at this point in time, or she should be asleep, quite frankly. She certainly should be asleep at this point in time because it's a crazy hour of the day for her. So we massively appreciate you getting up super early for us and coming on today, Dana. So tell me, high performance, what does that mean?
So high performance, there's a couple of ways to look at it. There's the typical, high performance as in high achiever. But then there's also the inner game of, high performance to me is also about, are you constantly stretching, growing, looking to challenge yourself from a mental or emotional side of things, not strictly the outward success factors, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot because I think often when we think of high performance, we think of hitting, financial goals, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
or some kind of milestone. But actually, some of it can be internal as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can have the desire to, okay, stretch yourself as far as how honest are you going to be in your relationships, in your conversations, in your,
Mm.
personal relationships, but also business relationships. Can you stretch yourself to match your ethics, your desires to serve in the world with what your goals are financially? Because they don't have to be in conflict with each other. They can actually be very supportive. We've seen that a lot with social businesses in how people can actually blend those pieces. So to me, all of that would be included in the high performance mindset, goals, targets. Yeah, far beyond just the money.
Amazing. I love that. So, I mean, this is a big question. How on earth do we do that? How do we measure up those things like ethics with performance?
Oh my goodness, yeah, big question.
It's huge. It's a huge question.
I
And it'll
know,
probably take
like,
you the next
have we
7 hours
got
to
a couple of
answer that.
days?
But
Have we
in
got
a
a
nutshell.
in a nutshell? I think really the first thing is drilling down to say, what are my ethics?
Mm,
Who do I want to stand for? What do I want to stand for?
yeah.
What do I want my legacy to be? The typical questions, but really getting honest and saying, okay, what matters to me? What are those pieces? Once you know what really matters to you, then you can also say, okay, well, what matters to me on a financial level? What do I want to create in the world on a business side of things? And then it's sitting down and say, okay, well, how do I pair those up? Is it a simple piece of, donating a certain percentage off the top to go towards your cause? That's one way of matching it up. That's very easy. Or maybe it is taking 2 weeks out of every year and going and donating your time with, building schools or planting trees or, donating to areas that are, lacking in the resources that we of course have in our first world countries that you and I are in.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So kind of working out, first of all, what matters in under each heading, basically, under each
Mm-hmm.
part of your life, an area of your life, and then saying,
Mhm.
okay, what actions can I therefore take that are linked to what matters to me, and enables me to perform at the highest level possible for me with each of these things that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just getting, I think for most people, it's just a matter of getting honest, and then once you
Mm,
get honest, then you can start to see opportunities, and if you don't, then, working with somebody who can, look from the outside and give you just that
mm.
that little perspective shift is always
Oh,
so helpful.
yeah, I was going to say, what would you say to people who say, well, that all sounds lovely. However, I don't have an extra 15 hours a week to be spending on all these actions that pair beautifully to all these different areas of my life. Yes, it would be amazing if I could plant trees for 2 weeks, but I've got 2 kids and a business to run.
Yeah, and it's not about an overnight shift. That's the
Mm,
first thing. Like so many times we are told, we're sold this idea of like, make six figures in 6 months, or, oh, you can scale your business from six figures to seven figures in a year. It's like, those are
mm,
unrealistic promises. The
yeah.
reality is that for most of us, business is it's a process, it's a growth, and same thing with making these shifts. I really like to work in that idea of like, let's make an incremental shift. So just like you would do if you were wanting to change your weight, it's
Mm,
better to start, removing or adding one thing at a time, as opposed to making a big massive change, because you
yes.
want it to be integratable. So I would say starting out with, okay, can we take 1% of your money off the top, put that
Mm,
aside, and you donate that to the cause that really matters to your heart. And then we work up to being able to take those 2 weeks off, because the bigger picture would be, okay, what's going on in your business? How are you managing it?
mm,
Where is there room for delegating? Because that's often the key is, us as business owners are terrible at letting go of control. But if we start letting go of the control, we start delegating, and delegating in a way that makes sense,
mhm.
which is, a whole other big topic. But those kinds of increments, then we can start moving towards. And maybe it takes 3 years before you can take 2 weeks off and go and
Mm.
plant trees. That's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing to notice with people. I know that I went through these cycles years ago of saying, right, I'm going to get really serious about my fitness, and I want to exercise a lot more. So what I would do, and I did this for years before I actually was like, hang on, Nick, this is not working. But basically, every time I thought I'm going to get serious about this, I'd write down all the different types of exercise in a week I'd like to do. So I'm like, I write, okay, I want to run 4 times a week. I want to go out on my bike 3 times a week. I want to go to the gym 4 times a week. And then I added it up, and I had to do exercise about 17 times literally within 1 week. And I was like, so that means I have to do 4 things on Tuesday. And of course, that barely lasted a day
Right.
because I was trying to suddenly implement every single thing I wanted to do all in the first week. And
Yeah.
I tried that again and again and again. It fell over again and again and again. I'm in it, luckily in a good habit now with my exercise, and I'm happy where that is. But I think that perhaps, particularly as business owners, we have this propensity to realize that we've seen something that we want to change, and we might have people listening or watching this who go, yeah, this is right, I'm going to write down what matters, I've got all my heading, I've got all these things listed out now, I know the actions, right, I need to get them all in place, and I need to get them all in place now because I'm not happy with the way I am, so something needs to seriously change, so I'm going to implement these 7 different things from now
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Not
And
sustainable
then
that way.
exactly. And then they do exactly what I did. And 2 days later, everything falls over. And oh, well, it's not for me. I'm just going to, that's another idea I need to screw up and throw in the bin.
Yeah.
So the small steps is actually what's going to sustain this system of working.
Yes. It's always about the small things. It's those
It
little
is.
tweaks, right? And then we bring it back to, business, and you look at what's going on. Like the reason I'm able to help a lot of people is just seeing those little pieces that are out of alignment, the little
Mhm.
pieces that need to be tightened up, And then, the business can flourish. It's rarely about some big systemic change. It's
Interesting.
more often just the small, simple things that we need to get in place on a regular basis. The consistency is huge. It's key.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistency is another thing that I love to speak about too, because I think it is so important. And I also often say to people, consistency doesn't actually mean relentlessness. They are two separate words and they mean two completely different things.
Absolutely. And you can be
And
consistently inconsistent. It's okay.
you can. That's hilarious. You absolutely can be consistently inconsistent. However, that's not necessarily the consistency that we're looking
Well,
for.
yeah, but if you start out there, right? Like I
Yeah.
find that a lot of people, because when you're developing a new habit, it is bumpy. It is,
Yes.
it's until it gets to be a place where, okay, I'm good with this. This is what I do every morning. This is what I do, at this time. But I always like to give people permission to do it messy, be inconsistent at the beginning until it becomes a habit that you like.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that how we were saying that we're looking at each areas of our life to do this and implement things that kind of that pair up with that. But I suspect this also works if you look at different areas of your business as well. So examining the sales, examining the marketing, examining the finances, examining operations, and looking at each of those areas and saying, okay, how do I pair my actions stroke the actions of my team and my organization as a whole with those things that we want,
Absolutely.
that matter to us as a business.
Yeah, and the people are the
Mm,
do you
yes.
have the right people who have the same vision? Are they on board with
Mm,
that vision, right? Especially if you want to pair in something in sustainability or ethics or
mhm.
the environmental pieces. Your people, are they on board with that? Do they get fired up about the cause and the bigger vision?
Yeah, I think that's a really important one, isn't it? Because if you've got somebody that's in charge of, say, let's say sustainability, but actually they're only putting it in place because you've said that that's part of their role,
Yeah.
actually that's not going to be the right energy behind that project or those decisions that need to be made or those actions that need to be taken.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually finding those, for want of a better phrase, right bums in the right seat can be difficult.
Mhm. Pardon me. Yeah, and it's the deliberate choice of who you
Mm,
hire.
yeah.
So one of the things I find as businesses scale up is those early people that you hired very often become a liability as you scale up,
Mm,
as you start to grow. So if you started out and you had like two key employees and they loved the fact that they were generalists, they're
yeah.
good, they're doing a lot of different things and they're really involved in what's going on, and very often us as business owners end up making them kind of a support system. But now all of a sudden, when you take your business up to 5 or 10 employees, now there's a very different dynamic going on.
Yeah.
They need to niche into one area because you need them specialized. And then, there's the dealing with other people. So very often those couple of first hires, 2, 3 hires, also need to be let go in the early
Mm.
formative pieces, because you can't take a generalist, make them a specialist, and expect to get the same results. And it's not a failure. It's just something I find that a lot of business owners overlook, and then you feel guilty because they've been with you and they've been such a great supporter, but you've got to do what is good for the health of your company and yourself.
Yeah, and I think that can often be overlooked as well, that the business's health needs focused on, and the business's health is actually separate to your own as a
Hmm.
business owner. And sometimes the decisions that we want to make as a human can be very different if we put our CEO hat on and
Yes.
we sit in that seat and we go, okay, what does this business require? Because, like you say, those early people that you take on, they might not fit in one of those boxes anymore. But often I think business owners almost try and mold roles around those first few hires, don't they,
Oh
as
my
you
goodness.
grow,
Yeah.
rather than looking at a kind of clean piece of paper for an org chart and saying, well, this is how I would have my organization now. Where does this person fit, if
Yeah.
anywhere?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's like that. That's why I love, diving into, the mental emotional side of business,
Mm,
because so many times it is clear cut. Like, business is not all that complicated when we
mm,
look at it, just ones and zeros, and these
yeah.
are the facts. Okay, this is working, this isn't working. But it is the emotional piece that
Mm,
often trips us up, often keeps us from doing what we need to be doing, whether it's firing somebody or hiring somebody, or
mm,
moving into a new area, ditching a project that we've got lots of sunk costs
yeah.
into. All of those pieces, that's where we start to give up our power, by letting the emotions, letting the shoulds and the judgments and all those things take over. So, again, this is where it's really easy for me to help people, because
Yeah.
move that out of the way and they can grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's where speaking to an independent person can really help, because they don't have the emotional tie-in with your
Yeah,
business that you have.
absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing better than that, bird's eye
Mm.
view perspective for people. We need that as business owners.
Yeah, definitely. So, what would you say to a business owner who's listening at the moment and is thinking, "Oh, I think my first few hires are probably not fit for purpose, but I'm friends with their husband or their spouse, or our kids play together, and oh, she's my best friend, and like all these kind of other emotional tie-ups with that other human being."
Mhm.
Or maybe even that other human is given so much of their time for free in the early stages, and is really invested personally in the business, but still isn't the right person to be in that seat.
Yeah, so the process that I would take people through is, first layer is looking at, okay, what stops you from being able to lean into that? And
Mm,
usually it's these, feeling obligated. Oh, you've hit the nail on the head on the
mm.
scenarios, right? It
Yeah.
is. It's like, I'm thinking you've seen this before.
Yeah, I know, it's
Um,
funny that, isn't it?
yeah.
It's-
So I totally get it. Um, it is this piece of being willing to do what's best for you and for the business, and being willing to be really honest with the other person. And the thing that I would hold out for people is, like, when we look at moving those resistances out of the way, then it also comes down to leaning in, to trusting that there's something better for that person.
Mm,
So here's the thing, is that nothing happens in a vacuum. So what's good for you, what's good for the business, is also going to be good for that key person.
mhm.
And trusting that in the long term, like, it's going to sting. There's lots of things that sting. If you've been a parent, that there's tough love at times,
Yeah.
and that's the same kind of thing. And so leaning into it and doing that process with as much love and compassion as possible, but getting to a place where you can just step into it,
Mhm.
with as much ease. It's never going to be comfortable. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be bumpy. And I invite people, really start it out there. It's like, this is really, really
Yeah.
uncomfortable. It does
Mhm.
not change how much I adore you, how much I, appreciate you, all of those things. And the reality is, there, I don't see the fit, right? And usually at this point, you've had conversations about what's not working,
Mhm.
because of course, the laws probably in the UK are the same as Canada. You
Yeah.
can't just fire somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has to be a process.
Yeah.
So those would be the highlights. Of course, there's some
Mm.
deeper inner work for some people. Other people can just lean in and be like, okay, trust, breathe, do it.
Yeah, and I think it's really, I think that part where you said actually just, being open and honest with them about the situation. I think that's something that many people sometimes feel scared to do with their team members and employees, is actually to to put it all on the table and say, look, this isn't working for this reason. Whether that be it is the best friend that they're having to let go, or whether it even be a performance related issue or a financial issue. You're a staff member that we just can't afford anymore because of X, Y, and Z. And I think that business owners often really struggle to be honest around those issues and to be open with their employees. Sometimes, I guess, for many fears, but sometimes for fear of seeming out of control or weak or those kinds of things as well. But actually, I think what we're saying here is it's actually not even just okay to be completely honest with them. It's actually really important.
Well, and for every relationship, this is not just for work, but right?
Of course.
Our conditioning has been that we typically don't get really honest with people. Right? We're wanting to hold back, thinking, "Oh, if I'm nice, they'll like me, it won't be rejected." And yet that commitment to dropping in and being honest in a compassionate way is the piece that's going to really propel things forward. So this is what I talk about high performance too, is that honesty, like real, authentic honesty, not just like, "Oh, I don't like that." Like really dropping into, okay, what's going on for me? Where am I at? Why am I resisting this? Those are also honesty with self. And then bringing that into all of our lives, business and personal. You can open up new dialogue and learn new things when you're willing to show up and be really honest in a way that's also creating space for other people to be honest and not be taking it personally, but just like, I'm curious what's going on for you. Can you explain that more? And having an open dialogue, you'll learn some interesting things.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to phrase things as well. When you do have team members that are perhaps not performing to the level that you want, and not behaving in the way that you want them to with certain tasks or with your clients or whatever, actually saying, what is going on with you? Tell me what's happening. Tell me what's happening in your life at the moment, to understand that we all have lots of stuff always going on all the time. And actually, if you can keep that door of honesty open with your team, then it is going to make things easier in the long run.
Yeah, and you really eliminate all of those misunderstandings, right? Where like, "Oh, I feel like they don't understand me, they're judging me." It starts to really eliminate that, because it may just be simply a matter of they're dealing with a sick mom at home, and so they're
Exactly.
distracted, and then they're snipping at people because they don't have enough sleep. It can just be a simple
Yeah.
piece of that. And then, having that honest conversation, then it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do? Right? You don't have to take responsibility as a business owner. You can just put it back to them and say, okay, how are you going to manage your sleep? What are you going to do? Because we do need you performing here.
Yeah, and it actually also, I think, stops that slippery road where in 3 months' time you're so annoyed with them that you've put them on a performance plan and you're basically essentially managing them out of the business. Yet actually having that conversation 3 months before could have meant that you didn't need to fire them and spend time finding someone else and hiring and training someone else, but
Right?
actually they could have managed to stay in your business and perform at a higher level if only everybody had been aware of the situations, the facts, what was happening behind the scenes for everybody else involved.
Yeah. Yeah, I've worked with organizations, and one of the fun things that I'm able to do is to facilitate these deeper conversations. And, sometimes, well, oftentimes, if I'm called in to do that, then we got a lot of mess. We got a lot
Yeah.
of, misconceptions and preconceived ideas and things. And so, we sit down and we have 2 days where taking them through the process and being able to open up conversation, it's transformative. The whole organization can change. People can change roles. And then everybody knows where everybody's at. You start to understand there's a lot more compassion. The teamwork builds. This is just like those team sport things that people go on for adventures. I think this is even more transformative than those, because you start to really get to know who your teammates are. And you start to get to know, they get to know you as a boss, they get to know each other. It's an amazing process.
What type of pushback do you get at those types of events?
God,
because I'm guessing you do. I'm guessing there's probably people who are like, no, we've always done it this way. What are you talking about? Yeah. I am not telling Johnny about what is happening at home with my missus. Like you must get all that kind of resistance. So how do you get over that resistance?
Yeah, and it's a lot of tango with the group.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very much tailored. You have to I have to read the room as to what's going on. And so, I have a series of exercises that I take people through. So we've got some opening, gradually increase the risk factor. And as they learn how to communicate with each other, then we can start increasing how much they share and how much they're vulnerable. So it's a muscle like every other muscle, and we have to work into it slowly. But when they're willing, when things do open up, it's just incredible. Plus, it spills over into each of their personal lives, which I just is so beautiful. Like I've seen people be able to repair their marriage that was on the rocks because they just took the tools home. So yeah, it's so beautiful.
I think the really key part to what you just said there as well links back to what we spoke about at the beginning, which is actually we're not going to jump in and try and change everything tomorrow.
Right.
Actually, we're going to take small steps. We're going to have some push and pull. We're going to see where we can kind of nudge things forward a little bit and improve them in small increments in order to do that consistently each day, each week, each month, each year, so that you move towards that end goal.
Right. Spot on.
Yeah, amazing. I love it. And I love how we've come very circular on that as well.
That was a beautiful tie-in together. It was like,
it was. It was very, very, very lovely. And I think that we've got some really amazing takeaways as well for people to have a think about and work on within their businesses too. So I love that too. Dana, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that I have very, very much enjoyed this conversation. And I'm sure our listeners and watchers will have done as well. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, where you hang out online and all that good stuff?
Beautiful. Thank you. This has been so much fun. So I have the unique pleasure of being the only Dana Pharant in the world. So I am very easy to find. LinkedIn is my social media platform preference. And Pharant is spelled Pharant. But yeah, you can Google me and find me wherever.
Amazing. So we'll put all the links in the show notes for those of you that are listening on the podcast as well, so that you have those in there. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. Are you heading to bed now, or are you staying up for the day? Heading to bed. Well, have a lovely sleep. Thank you. And thank you again for joining me. Thank you to all our listeners and watchers. I appreciate your time. I know it's precious, so thank you for spending some of it with us today. And I will speak to you all very soon. Take care, everyone.